You want to know why most Americans, 77%, are feeling financially strapped? They're feeling stuck. I want to show you something that people are doing with all of their discretionary cash. Bye-bye. Bottom line is, listen, if you don't have these 4 things going on in your life, you're going to feel stuck. Let's get unstuck. Life financially gets a little complicated, and it's not that I really like throwing money away down the toilet drain, but it is strange that that is what we are doing when we don't have a financial IQ, when we don't have the financial information, when we're not living life the way that we're supposed to, because this stuff right here, we're not good at making it. And most people are living in scarcity. They're living in a consumer mindset. They're trying to keep up with the Joneses, and whoever the Joneses are, they get a bad rap. They're always just trying to buy more stuff, and yet they can't figure out what are the few simple choices in life you make that will yield everything that you could ever possibly want. But first, let's just dive in real deep on what the stats are saying about how people are feeling. According to Mind Over Money survey by Capital One and Decision Lab, 77% of Americans report feeling anxious about their financial situation. 50% of Americans feel at least somewhat trapped. 17% feel very or extremely trapped. And here's what's interesting. Millennials are feeling it the most at 67%. It's 54% of Gen Z, 53% Gen X, only 31% of boomers. And when people are strapped, there's things that they do to make ends meet. Check it out, 19% sold off their belongings, 19% borrowed money from friends or family, 16% maxed out their credit cards, 15% overdrafted on a bank account, 13% withdrew from savings or borrowed against the mortgage, and 11% got an on-demand side job or gig. So when the going gets tough, I don't know if the tough gets going, but people are panicking, they're selling their crap. It's interesting, the last time I was in a really tough bind, I did a lot of these things real quick. I was borrowing money from friends and family. I maxed out my credit cards. My wife definitely experienced overdrafting the bank account when she just tried to buy groceries. We took everything out against our savings. And to boot, it didn't feel good. Like, it was a rough pickle to be in. And I'm so grateful that actually provided the motivation to want to climb out, because the 4 pieces of advice that I am going to give you today, there's a lot of people that look at them and they're like, oh, that's too hard, or I don't know if I'm going to do that. I'm like, if you don't do these things, you'll definitely never get out of the rat race of life. When you're in a pinch, you do those things to basically temporarily elevate your situation, but it's a little bit like a Band-Aid, right? It's not really addressing the problem, just the symptom. What I want to do is I want to talk about what the real problem is, and then what you've got to do to get yourself out of that situation. And so these are the 4 things that matter the most to financially get unstuck. The first thing that needs to be corrected is the mindset. There is a consumer mindset and there's an investor mindset. And this consumer mindset says that the reason why I'm making money is so that I can buy more things. And I'm not accusing you of being materialistic, but if you just pause for a moment, it's like the next money that comes into your life, has it kind of already been spent? Like, have you been looking at taking that vacation? Or maybe you want to get the next PlayStation Portal, there's another game that I want to get, and then I want to go to the movies with my friends. And then it's like, when I have discretionary income, it's just kind of already spent. And this is like this consumer mindset where you're like this hamster trapped on a wheel. It's like, I am like literally making money just so that I can spend it, but then I feel angsty inside because I never have what I want. This is very different than the investor mindset, because the investor mindset says, oh, dude, I actually like to have discretionary income. I like to save it because I want to grow it. Like, I want to make my money work for me. And it's interesting, I've experienced both of these. Like, there was a point in my life where I was deep in the investor mindset where I was like, oh my gosh, I almost got off on this idea of any leftover money that I get to make, I'm going to invest it. And it was like, it was thrilling to me. I'm going to make my money perform and make money for me so I don't have to work for it. But I remember that after I did that for years and I had all this money and I was living in my mansion and everything was great, then I shifted to the consumer mindset and I was having fun, like spending and spending and spending. And I got to a point where I'm like, oh no, I'm kind of running out of money. Like, I'm getting good at spending money. And I remember that what I had to do to get back into the investor game was actually kind of hard, because I started making a list. I'd be like, oh, okay, let's make a list of the last things that I'm going to buy, and then I'll start investing. The list went on and it went on and it went on. I'm like, wait a second, it never ends. Like, the consumer mindset literally is a bottomless pit where there will never be enough money and it's already spent before you've got it. The only way out of it is to shift into the investor mindset. Fortunately, I was able to get back in that spot. And what it meant was I just kept making my money work for me and work for me and work for me, to a point where there was so much left over, I could start enjoying all the choices in life in balance that I really wanted. The average person has this consumer mindset, and what they prioritize is immediate gratification with their finances. They're basically driven by novelty products and services that are promoted through advertising. But the wealthy, on the other hand, how they even become wealthy is they get addicted to investing. Investors prioritize long-term wealth over short-term pleasures. A mindset not limited by wealth or income, but entirely by a new approach to money altogether. Now, I want you to think about how you actually apply this principle. What does it actually mean? Well, there's another part of the mindset. It's not just developing an investor's mindset that says, well, to be wealthy, I need to make my money work for me. You also have to shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. A fixed mindset ultimately says, everything that I know is everything I need to know, and I've got everything that I need. But a growth mindset says, I actually don't got it, and I haven't figured it out, and I need to read more books, and I need to make new friends, and I need to seek out new perspectives. It really is a different way of looking at life. And how can you get out of stagnation, financially speaking, unless you're financially consuming books about money and finances and different financial options and choices, or getting a mentor, someone that can actually step in your life and then give you a fresh perspective? A fixed mindset traps individuals in a poor belief mindset of basically being permanently stuck, dwelling on past events, doubting their abilities. But on the other hand, embracing a growth mindset fosters continuous development and upward mobility, shifting focus towards future possibilities while appreciating the present. Like I can tell you, even just reading books on positivity, like that even in and of itself starts believing in new possibilities instead of this stuck, fixed mindset of like, well, I haven't been able to get out of this yet. Why on earth would I think I can get out of it now? I'm doomed. If you follow me a little bit on social media, you've probably heard me talk a little bit about my morning routine, which is all about stepping into this growth mindset, because I'm doing visualizations and meditations, and I'm reading my books, and I'm going to the gym and constantly pushing myself to learn new things, do new things, because ultimately that does lead to having new things, not just like stuff materialistically, but you literally become something new and different because your operating system every single day is literally reaching for results that you haven't produced before. This second piece of advice is really where rubber hits the road. You gotta know what money is coming in and what money is going out. Budget, right? It's like, oh, Kris, but that's not really sexy. Is that really one of the 4 things? Do we gotta talk about that? Yes, you need a budget. You need to know every month the paychecks, where money is flowing in, and then you need to know your expenses. You need to know how money moves in your world. And here's one of the most important reasons for doing a budget. Your budget may take into account what your monthly expenses are, but I got news for you. You have quarterly expenses, you have biannual expenses, you have annual expenses, which means that there's things that you're not planning for, there's things that you're not thinking about, which means that when they come up and you pay them and you drain your savings account, you're thinking, there I am behind that proverbial 8 ball all over again. Well, I got news for you. That's all budgetable. For example, let's just say once a year you want to take a trip, and let's say you need $3,000 for that trip. Well, that means that you need roughly $250 every single month for a year, so that magically when it comes time for travel, you have that money sitting in an account. The expense didn't come up until the actual trip, but the time to be budgeting for it actually happened a lot sooner. Thinking like an investor means being in control of your money. Whether you make $10 per hour or $1 million per year is irrelevant. People who care about building long-term wealth know how to budget. By the way, if you're looking at me and you're like, Kris, you probably graduated from that, right? I mean, financially, you're so well-to-do, you probably don't even have a budget anymore. Of course I have a budget. People with money have money because they're smart and they know where it comes in. They don't become more frivolous and more loose with it just because they have more of it. Even if you look on social media at some of the things that I like to buy or some of the extravagant things I like to have, did you know all of those things are coming from a budget? Yup. People who budget know that they need to make money and save it so that they have money to invest. It goes back to that investor mindset. You have to have a system for saving it, aka the budget, so that with the investor mindset, you can then look forward to investing it and asking, how do I get performance on my money? I saved $5,000. Where can I put $5,000 and have it become $10,000? Well, my job still has my income coming in that's reflected on my budget, but I invested my money and 8 months later, my money came back and it doubled. That means I have $5,000 more on top of my original investment that simply just wasn't there before. This explains why the people who make the most money are not necessarily the richest. According to Bankrate, 47% of people making over $100,000 live paycheck to paycheck. To avoid this mistake, investors organize their finances in a way that gives them visibility into how they make and spend money, and then they use this information to inform their investing decisions. Before I could buy my 1,000th property, I had to buy my first. And it turns out that I needed $3,300 as a 3% down payment on buying that very first house. My wife and I budgeted like crazy for those first 14 months to basically put $5,000 into savings so that we could have the $3,300 to buy the house. Without budgeting, this just doesn't happen. And I got news for you. There are two ways to make money. You either make more money or you spend less money. Both of them equate to actually having more money. And between the two, do you know what's easier? Is it making more or spending less? Cutting down your expenses is actually the easiest way to simply have more money. And if you don't have a budget, how do you actually know if you're doing it? And to what purpose? Well, you're actually cutting the budget not to step into fear and scarcity. It's so that you can set aside more money for investing, because once you, trust me, once you actually get money starting to make money for you, it can become a little addictive. Like, it's actually kind of exciting. It's like, whoa, I bought a house and that house pays me $500 a month. And I got news for you. That's $500 more every month that I don't have to make at my job. I didn't even have to get a second job because it's totally passive. This is so cool. And then when you buy your second house and you now have over $1,000 a month coming in, that's when your unsupportive wife, this was my wife, came to me and said, Kris, we need to get more real estate. And we dreamed about owning 20 homes that would pay us $10,000 a month. Now I had her support. And it's because we were managing our expenses so that we could have more money to invest. The third choice that you're going to need to make to financially pull out of this stuck in the rut is time management. In other words, you gotta learn how to protect and prioritize your time. Investors know that aside from their health, their time is their most valuable thing that they have, and they use it to reach their financial goals. They spend time getting better at things that matter to them, which results in more financial success in the long run. Consumers are not as discerning with their time, and they choose to waste it on things that result more in temporary lust than lasting happiness. Being a smart investor also means seeing the connection between money and time very clearly. In other words, investors know what to spend money on that will save them time in the long run. So, for example, if purchasing a monthly subscription gives them more time to spend building up their side hustle, they'll invest in the subscription. I can't emphasize enough that when you budget and you have discretionary money, that means there's leftover after you've paid all the bills, then some of that money is actually supposed to be used towards making money. It's like, it takes money to make money, I'm gonna use this money, I'm gonna buy this asset and it's gonna make me money. But some of the money that you're saving is actually not supposed to go into an asset that appreciates in value. It's actually supposed to go towards paying people to do things for you or services for you that help you reclaim your time, because guess what you can do with reclaimed time? You then can apply it to a project or a side hustle, a gig, or more work that can actually make you more money. There was a time in the beginning of my career when I was a full-time student, I had a full-time job, and I had my full-time real estate business. And I'll never forget the month where three really cool things happened. The first thing that happened was I graduated school, so I got all of this time back. It was like a monkey off my back. That same month, I quit my job, which basically restored so much lost time. But the last thing I did is I hired someone to run my real estate business. I flew them in from Florida, and all of a sudden they did 95% of the work. And in 1 month, everything changed because I got all of this time back. And from there, I was still making and keeping most of the money, even after hiring the dude. And what that meant was I could figure out how to reallocate my time towards that next higher functioning financial activity. And now we get to the fourth and final way of how you get unstuck. And it's a combination of all three coming together and saying, well, now I'm managing my time better and I'm managing my money better. What am I supposed to do? Well, now you need to become an expert at acquiring assets. What is an asset? Well, I'll tell you what a liability is. When you buy a boat or a thing, it immediately loses value, right? Like if you've been to a car lot and you bought a car and you drove it off the lot and then a month later something crazy happened in your life and like, man, maybe I should just sell my car. You're like, oh, I lost thousands of dollars the moment I drove it off the lot, right? Those are liabilities. And another definition of liability is you put money into them, but they don't give you money back. They just keep taking money from you. An asset does the opposite. It might take money to acquire the asset, but now the asset actually gives you money back. It goes up in value. It produces a benefit for you. You need to become an expert at acquiring assets. Now, by asset, I don't mean a 401k or an IRA. That's an accumulation methodology of like, I'm just gonna save money for retirement. Remember that in 40 years of working life, the average person can only save 3 years worth of money for retirement. At 65, you're spending $80,000 a year and you're retiring with $240,000. So basically 3 years of money after 40 years of work. That's a problem. Instead, we're not accumulating money. We're not stashing it in 401ks and IRAs and paying off houses. We're buying assets. We're buying things that go up in value, and we're buying things that make us money and pay us money. What you need to do is become obsessed with investing. Like, you should start reading books on investing and like real estate. What is a good deal versus a bad deal? Buying a business, starting a business. Like, how do I get into these different financial games? Well, that's part of the growth mindset. These are the books that you're reading, not just on positivity, but you're learning and mastering the game of money because you're starting to look for opportunities and you're starting to compare them against each other. And if you're not a subscriber yet, like, take care of that right now, because all I do is drop gems on how you master the game of money. It all comes down to this one tip of acquiring assets. Embrace a split test approach, learning from each venture like a seasoned sailor navigating uncharted waters, experimenting with different investment strategies, and aiming for higher ROIs. Like, when I invest in real estate, I'm going for a 25% ROI minimum. Why 25%? Because the market produces opportunities with 401ks and IRAs and the stock market that average about 6%. At 25%, I am making 27 times more money over a 20-year span. That's the difference between retiring poor with not enough money and retiring rich with millions of dollars. You also got to keep the long game in sight, nurturing assets with care and not letting short-term gains distract you by falling back into a consumer mindset. It took me 4.5 years of investing to acquire 25 properties that paid me a 6-figure residual income. I didn't have to work for the money. That 6 figures just came in all on its own. But where I went from there was then buying hundreds of homes, thousands of homes. Then I started building companies. Then I started learning that buying companies is a lot easier than actually starting companies from scratch. So by getting in the game and becoming opportunistic and taking the hard-earned saved money that you've been doing from budgeting with the right investor mindset, before you know it, it's like, I have something to invest. And I won't always be right, and I'll take calculated risks, and sometimes I'll be wrong, but it's better than a guarantee of financial failure. Honestly, the best thing that I can extend to you right now is a multi-millionaire's perspective on your financial situation. I mean, the reality is, you're watching this video, you have a certain level of income, you have good credit or bad credit, you've been great at saving money, you haven't saved any money, you're doing well, or you're living check to check, or maybe you're falling behind. And I can give you a perspective with very specific steps of what I would do if I were you to make your next $1 million. And if you'd like to know what that looks like, you can click the link below this video and I'll show you exactly what it is. You're just gonna answer a handful of questions for me. Me and my team are gonna be in touch, and then I'm gonna deliver a very succinct, custom step-by-step game plan on exactly what you need to do to finish getting yourself out of this rut. Because today we covered 4 very important principles, but if you want something more dialed into your exact situation, sometimes that's what it takes to get where you're trying to go. Click the link below, request a free game plan right now. Let's do this. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you're thinking, Kris, I just don't have money to invest yet, what if I told you that $5 was all you needed to start investing today? That does sound a little too good to be true, except it is true, and I made a video to prove it, and the video is right here. Click right here. Let me show you how $5 can start your investing career right now.